Welcome to Liberty Voice USA, where truth takes the center stage and political illusions are stripped away one fact at a time. Our commitment has always been simple: to bring clarity where others bring confusion, to bring facts where others deliver noise. In a political world often consumed by performance and pretense, our mission is to cut through the spectacle and expose the human reality behind the headlines. Tonight's story takes us deep inside Capitol Hill, into a confrontation that no one saw coming. It started as just another heated committee session, another routine debate over policy and procedure. But before long, the tone shifted. What began as political sparring turned into something far more personal. At the center of it all, Speaker Mike Johnson and Representative Jasmine Crockett, two political forces from opposite ends of the spectrum, clashing not just over ideology, but over integrity. The moment unfolded live, cameras rolling, the air thick with tension. Representative Crockett, known for her sharp legal background and unflinching composure, had been questioning a recent set of financial disclosures filed by senior members of Congress. She was calm, deliberate, but her tone carried an unmistakable undercurrent. She knew something the room didn't. Across the table, Johnson sat poised, his usual steady demeanor unshaken, or so it seemed. The Speaker of the House, a man who built his brand on moral clarity and family values, was now being confronted with numbers and names that appeared to challenge that very foundation. Crockett began by referencing an obscure tax filing from several years prior, a small but telling document that listed financial transfers between Johnson's private trust and a family business entity registered under his brother's name. The transactions themselves weren't illegal, but the timing, she noted, was curiously aligned with key political donations made to Johnson's early congressional campaign. The room grew still. For a brief moment, even the usual hum of side chatter faded. Crockett leaned forward and asked the question that would later define the day's headline. "Mr. Speaker, can you explain why these family funds, which appear connected to political donors, moved through private accounts just weeks before your campaign filings?" Johnson's response was measured, his voice calm but increasingly tight. He spoke of faith, of family support, of the sacrifices his loved ones made for his career. But as Crockett continued, citing a series of updated disclosures that contradicted earlier statements, the calm began to crack. "Transparency," she said softly, "isn't just about what you tell the public. It's about what you don't." Those words hung in the air like a verdict. Johnson shifted in his seat. The cameras caught it all, the subtle tightening of the jaw, the slow exhale, the glance to his aides. Then came the pause, a long silence, before he finally stood up. No statement, no rebuttal, just a quiet exit from the hearing room. The Speaker of the House, walking out mid-session, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a storm of speculation. Within minutes, social media lit up. Clips of the walkout spread like wildfire. Some called it a political ambush. Others called it accountability in action. Supporters of the Speaker accused Crockett of turning a legitimate oversight hearing into a personal attack. But others, including many independents, argued that the questions were fair, the evidence worth examining, and the reaction revealing. It wasn't just about the money. It was about trust, about whether the leaders who preach transparency are willing to live by it when the spotlight turns inward. And it reignited an old debate in Washington, one that crosses party lines, about the blurred boundary between public service and private gain.
Later that evening, Johnson's communications office released a brief statement, describing the incident as a coordinated attempt to distract from the administration's failures. They insisted that all financial records were fully compliant and that any suggestion otherwise was political theater. But Crockett's team responded swiftly. They released a packet of publicly available filings, along with a timeline showing repeated amendments made to Johnson's disclosure forms over the past several years, each one narrowing the gap between public claims and private reality.
By the next morning, major networks had picked up the story. Commentators on both sides tried to shape the narrative. Was this the latest example of partisan grandstanding, or the long-overdue scrutiny of a powerful figure? And yet, beyond the noise, something deeper was unfolding. Americans watching from home could sense the fatigue, not just from this scandal, but from the endless cycle of spin and deflection that has defined modern politics. A nation weary of polished speeches and carefully managed outrage was watching, once again, as personal conviction collided with public accountability. For Jasmine Crockett, this wasn't her first time challenging the establishment. Her rise from Texas attorney to congressional firebrand has always been fueled by a promise to confront power with facts. In her closing remarks that day, after Johnson's departure, she didn't gloat or grandstand. Instead, she addressed the audience, not the absent speaker. This isn't about who's right or left. It's about who's honest and who's not. Simple words, but they cut through the static. In politics, perception often matters more than truth. But in this moment, the visual of a sitting speaker walking out under pressure spoke louder than any statement. It became an instant symbol of fragility, of pride, of the growing gap between rhetoric and responsibility. Behind closed doors, aides reportedly scrambled to contain the fallout. Leaked memos suggested that party strategists were furious at the optics, fearing that the moment could erode public confidence ahead of key elections. Meanwhile, Crockett's supporters celebrated her as a voice of accountability, a rare politician willing to challenge power without flinching. But the truth, as always, lies somewhere between. It's easy to cast one side as righteous and the other as corrupt. Yet politics is rarely that clean. Financial entanglements, family ties, and donor networks form the invisible architecture of modern governance. Everyone claims transparency until transparency becomes inconvenient.
And that's where this story resonates beyond two individuals. It's not just about Mike Johnson or Jasmine Crockett. It's about a political system built on trust that too often depends on secrecy. A system where the line between influence and corruption is drawn not by law, but by what the public is willing to ignore. As the investigation continues, more documents are expected to surface. Whether they prove wrongdoing or merely poor optics, one fact remains. The American people deserve clarity. They deserve leaders who don't walk out when the questions get hard. For decades, Washington has operated on a code of selective accountability, exposing opponents while protecting allies. But every once in a while, someone like Crockett steps into the chamber and reminds the nation that power without scrutiny is not democracy, it's theater. There's a lesson in this confrontation, not just for politicians, but for all of us. The health of a democracy isn't measured by how loud its leaders speak, but by how willingly they listen when confronted with uncomfortable truths. When leaders flee from that moment, even symbolically, it reveals something about the moral state of governance. As this story develops, one question remains unanswered.
What drives a leader to walk out? Is it anger, guilt, or simply exhaustion with the game itself? Perhaps in a city built on performance, silence is the only honest reaction left. For viewers at home, watching this unfold wasn't just another political episode. It was a mirror held up to power. It forced Americans to ask not just what their leaders are hiding, but why so many seem afraid of their own records.
Maybe, at its core, this confrontation wasn't about financial documents at all. Maybe it was about the fragility of image, the tension between who our leaders claim to be and who they truly are when the cameras don't cut away. As the echoes of that committee room fade, and as pundits twist the narrative into sound bites, one truth stands firm. Democracy can't survive on half-truths. It demands full accountability, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's personal. And that is why moments like this matter. Not because of scandal, but because they remind us that the pursuit of truth still has power, even in an age when it's easier to walk away. Stay tuned, stay aware, and stay truthful. This is Liberty Voice USA, where facts speak louder than politics.